While it may be cold outside, things are getting toasty warm at Global Voice Broadcasting. Heat up your winter nights with the hottest topics, the hottest celebrities, and today's best music. It's why Global Voice Broadcasting is becoming your 24/7 home for the music and talk you want right now. Discover your favorite shows and music anytime at globalvoicebroadcasting.com.
I highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her.
Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
Aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, determination. These are the keys of life success brought to you by none other than award-winning author, motivational lecturer, business consultant, and much more as she gets you aimed to your purpose. And now, ladies and gentlemen, young and elder, from Hollywood to the entire world, here is your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Louise Hicks, along with her co-host, yours truly, Kennon Wesley Mason.
Hello, world. How is everybody today? And as always, I'm your host, Louise Hicks of Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
And I am your host, Kennon Mason, and I want to say, as always, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, or good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone listening and watching Aim to Purpose, the radio show, as we bring you the best in internet radio. As always, call in from anywhere around the world, 1-323-522-5482 from anywhere around the world, 1-323-522-5482 as we bring you another special edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, as we are acknowledging the last week of, or the last day actually, of Black History Month. And we're going to actually end Black History Month by talking about something equally as important, if you will, talking about how to have our finances in order. Today's topic, Tax Time 2016, getting the best tax breaks.
And that's a most significant topic to talk about, actually, because if you don't have your finances in place, you'll be up here like we were laughing last night. I'm sure all of you watched the Academy Awards, and Chris Rock was hilarious. His monologue was brilliant as far as I'm concerned. My perspective on it, he did a great job. And from what I understand, this Academy was the lowest rating, they said, since 2001, with about 35 million viewers from what I read on my research, which was okay as far as I'm concerned. And the movie that attracted everybody, I guess, was Spotlight. And I haven't seen that movie, in which I haven't seen a lot of movies. The one that won when we had the highest rating since 2001 was 2014, and that was when Ellen DeGeneres hosted the Academy Awards, and it was 12 Years of a Slave. I haven't seen that movie either. So I'm really not a movie person much, but I kind of do research and follow little things. But it was interesting how this was one of the most controversial Academy Awards that we've had. And my thoughts on it was that and I'm so glad we have this last show, the final show of this month, being Black History Month that we've been celebrating all month, about Tax Time 2016 and getting the best tax breaks, because it is about financial economics, ownership, and we must own something. If you want to be represented, own your own. As a kid, my parents always said, Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that has his own. So we need to start getting our own, because you can't make someone accept you into something that does not belong to you. And that's my perspective on it. What do you think about it, Ken?
I agree. I actually, because I know that our guests have a few things to say before we actually jump into the other topic. So before I have my say, can we go to our first break now and then come back and introduce our guests so we can kind of get into all
a conversation
about
just
kind of get into the conversation and stir the pot, because all of it kind of intermixes.
Ties in. Yes, it does all tie in, because economics ties in greatly. If you own something, you have a say.
Yep.
So let's take our first break, and we're going to come back and introduce our guests, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Academy Awards and Chris Rock, because he did rock last night.
Hello, world! It's a new year, which means new and live editions of Aim to Purpose, the radio show. We'll be sharing new ideas with new guests from around the world, revealing new truths with every new topic presented to you, the A2P universe. So tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here at Global Voice Broadcasting at gvbstudios.com/show/A2P. You can also check out all of our archive shows on YouTube by typing in Aim to Purpose Radio. A special thank you to all the loyal viewers that have been with us from the beginning, and a big welcome and thank you to all the new viewers plugging into the A2P universe. Your power lies within you, so let it loose. Once again, this is Kennon Wesley Mason, co-host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
And hello, world, again. We're back. I'm your host, Louise Hicks, along with my co-host, Kennon Wesley Mason. And today, our topic is Tax Time 2016, getting the best tax breaks. And we have a special in-house guest today, and we have a special Skype-in guest today. So we're going to introduce both of our guests, and then we're going to have a conversation, because we want to talk a little bit about the Academy Awards. Then we're going to get into sharing with you some financial information, advice, solutions, and how to deal with Uncle Sam, as they say, the IRS. We're going to have a great conversation here today. So let's go ahead and introduce our guest.
Yes, Eric Pierre is a highly skilled professional with over 12 years experience in the Big Four and private industry, with a proven track record for adding value through initiative, delivery, leadership, integrity, and success. In Eric's previous life, he was responsible for the leading, planning, and execution of audits of field, operations, and corporate financial service centers for some Fortune 500 companies. His experience spans the globe, with experience doing business in Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean, in addition to working in the United States in the following industries: energy, power, E&P, EPC, and pharmaceuticals. Eric founded Bedrock Assurance LLC in 2014 with the purpose of providing high-quality tax, audit, bookkeeping services, cost recovery, and business plan consulting for entrepreneurs, small business owners, wage earners, and the like. Eric hosts Trading Dimes for Dollars, a podcast available on iTunes, as well as a web series called Bank on Change. Eric graduated with a Master's of Professional Accountancy and a Bachelor's of Business Administration in Accountancy with honors from Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas. H. Cortez Thornton. I also realized that the other thing 90% of them have in common is a keen understanding of how money really works, and more importantly, how to get money working for them. This edition, he'll outline the steps that he's applying in his own life currently, and the same steps that he's taught many others to overcome the roadblocks that'll keep us from our financial destination. So please give a warm welcome, Aim to Purpose style, to in studio Eric Pierre and Skyping in H. Cortez Thornton.
Hello, Eric. Welcome, and thank you for coming into the studio to join us today.
Thank you very much.
And we know you're a little bit tired because you just got in from Houston and then you just run in here to the studio, and we're so happy to have you because we know you've had a busy schedule. And welcome Cortez, Skyping all the way in from, is it St. Louis? Cortez? Hello, Cortez, are you there?
He's not in right now. We'll have to try and get him back on the line.
We'll get him back on the line. Anyhow, Cortez is Skyping in with us, so we'll get Cortez back on the line, and we'll talk a little bit more with Cortez once he comes in. But just to chime back in on the Academy Award, as I had mentioned earlier, they said it was one of the lowest ratings, or viewers rather, one of the lowest viewers since, I think I said 2001. But that's not true. I made a mistake there. It really was 2008. I think Jon Stewart had one of the lowest since 2001 when he hosted in 2008. And then, since then, we had about 34 million viewers. And I think Jon Stewart, I believe they said he had about 32 million viewers back in 2008. And the highest since 2001 was Ellen, as I said, when she had about 43 million viewers. And that was the year that 12 Years a Slave won. Yeah. But the movie Spotlight won. Now, I haven't seen that movie. It was... from what I understand about the sexual abuse of the priests out of Boston, and it was a group of journalists that kind of shed light on all of this, and it won. But what do you have to think? What do you say about that, Eric?
I never saw that movie. I watched some of the Academy here and there as I was working on a few things, and so I thought Chris Rock did a great job of addressing the things in a very humorous fashion. I loved how he brought the Girl Scouts from Los Angeles, and
yes,
all the actors happen to have a bunch of 20s and hundies, so I don't know if that was staged or not, but I think the things needed to be said. I know some of the language probably wasn't necessarily ideal, but I think it was in good taste, and I think part of the reason the lower viewership was on, people are scared to be confronted with these things.
Yeah.
And then second, the movies that were up weren't exactly compelling movies compared to when Ellen hosted in 2014. There probably were better movies up for awards than this year overall.
It could have been. That could have had something to do with it.
And we do have H. Cortez Thornton on, I believe. Cortez, are you there?
I am here, guys.
There we go.
Right.
It's all right.
Hello,
hey, we got you.
Cortez. Thanks for chiming in with us. We're glad to have you on the show today to talk with us about Tax Time 2016 and getting the best tax breaks, because we know you're an author, and you and Eric we're gonna share a little bit about the book a little bit later, Financial Health Traffic Report, that you guys wrote. I think you wrote it, Cortez, but I believe Eric may have contributed something to it.
That's right. I wrote the foreword to it.
Okay.
Cortez wrote the book.
Right. Cortez is the author of the book. So, and that's something we'll talk a little bit more about the end, because he's letting you download it for free. So I hope you take advantage of that.
Right.
But did you see the Oscars, Cortez?
You know what? I'm not a big TV watching person, and I only knew the Oscars was on last night because I saw something on Facebook about it.
Okay.
So I'm that kind of guy that's not really into watching TV. The only shows I watch are the shows that my wife have on as I lay down and get ready to put my head in the pillow, so I might stuff that she's watching.
I
understand.
Well, we were just sharing about it being one of the lowest viewers since 2008, which they had about 34 million, which is a lot of people, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. And we were sharing about Chris Rock and how he brought about what the controversial has been about, not enough people of color, black people, of Asians, Latinos being a part of these opportunities in Hollywood, and that's nothing new. This has been going on for ages. As a kid back in the 60s, and he spoke a little bit about that, most black people didn't even watch the Academy Awards, really. Nobody watched it. We could have cared less about it, as he said, but we were too busy trying to survive. It wasn't about any movies or Academy Awards. Some of us didn't even have TVs back then, let alone going to the theater, and if you went to the theater, you were put in the black. I mean, I grew up in this stuff. I'll be 65 this Friday, and if you went to the theater, you had to go to your part of the theater, and the whites went to their part of the theater, because where I grew up in Louisiana, it was basically black and white. That's how it was. Yeah. So, I mean, and we've come some ways, but there's a long ways to go, and sadly, most people don't want to talk about it. And that's sad, because how will you solve anything unless you have a dialogue? And I'm glad Chris Rock did have that dialogue. There were people who put him down for it and felt that it wasn't in good taste, but I mean, he's a comedian.
I thought it was spot on perfect.
It really was, as far as I'm concerned. He's a comedian, and he took his brilliance and he put it into great dialogue, and gave us a great platform to start talking about this stuff and doing something about it, which is going to segue us into this financial crisis and struggle that we as black people have, because we don't know enough about finances, and we need to learn. And
the one thing I like to say about Chris Rock, they're throwing him under the bus, those who didn't like it. I have one question for those people. Did he tell a single lie?
Right.
No, he did not.
Right. And that was the whole point. That was the whole point.
He didn't make up a bunch of stuff. He just told the truth, and people don't like to be confronted with the truth, especially in mainstream on such a large platform.
That's right. And he told the truth in front of a majority white Caucasian audience that watches the Oscars year after year after year after year. They got to finally have a dose of their own medicine to see what's going on in the mind of the black actor or the black actress that is struggling to make it in Hollywood. And Chris took it upon himself to make many statements actually last night. And put it in the face of the majority of the white audience that were in attendance in front of their television sets. They got to see through our eyes, if you will. For 3.5 hours, Chris Rock just kept giving it to him every single segment without hesitation.
And as we segue into what we want to talk about, you know why he's able to.
Right.
Yes.
Because he's an owner.
Right. He funded his last movie. He funded it himself.
Makes sense. And that's what we have to do, is have ownership. And that brings us to another, this is about TV. It's not about the movie here, where it was trending pretty much the whole weekend about Melissa Harris Perry being basically dropped from MSNBC, her news program, because she's a journalist, she's a professor at a university, I believe, and they had given her this weekend platform to do the news. And as we know, there were several black journalists that were given platforms during the last 8 years, and we know why they were given those platforms, and we knew they would go away. They should have known that they would go away. As soon as that administration goes away, you go away, because you're no longer of service to them.
That's right.
So,
and Eric can elaborate on that, because ownership, employee versus employer, the CPA here. Let's hear it.
All right. Well, so Melissa was funny. I found her letter comical. She wrote that email that got leaked, talk about, I'm not a mammy, I'm not a token, I'm not a quota, you can put whatever adjective, superlative, right? But the reality, and she talked about saying it's her show, but she did not have any ownership to the content, okay? And so was race involved in this? Probably. But at the same time, this is an issue, and I published this on my fan page. I'm going to use a Caucasian guy, Colin Cowherd. When he was with ESPN, he wanted to take ownership of his digital content. ESPN said no. So that's why he left to go to Fox. And if you go to my Facebook fan page, there's a 2-minute rant where he talks about that he wanted ownership. So he had to fire his agent, got another agent. Fox Sports lets him own his content, right? He has proprietary relationship. He even said that he's an S corp.
Yeah.
But like you said, the thing is, in our community,
S corp. I like that.
There's not a lot of financial literacy. In fact, did you know in our country we have about 700,000 CPAs, and out of that, less than 1% are in the African American community that have that designation.
Right.
Most people that do taxes are tend to be the registered tax preparers or the enrolled agents, and even enrolled agents, there's not a lot of African Americans with that designation.
That is true, and unfortunately for us, we need to learn about this capitalistic system, and we need to learn ownership. That's how we move forward. Become a BOSS.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Be your own boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then whether, especially if your own boss or if you own something, you're always going to have people that are going to disagree with how you went about getting your own stuff. You're always going to have, quote, the haters. Always.
Exactly.
Right.
But it's okay because you're doing as an entrepreneur what they're not willing to do, but talk.
And talk is cheap.
You gotta love your haters. You gotta love your
Right.
haters. Without haters, there's nothing to push you. So I'm looking to pick up 3 or 4 more haters before the end of the year.
There you go.
Well, you never know. They might be asking you for a job one day too, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
You never know. And it's interesting how people that don't own anything, or the ones of us who are struggling, and we know we're talking about Black History this month, and we know massively, collectively, we are struggling within our neighborhoods. And I say neighborhoods as opposed to communities, because communities have more cohesiveness. They have their own banks and decent grocery stores. They have decent schools that their children go to. And when you drive through the Black neighborhood, you don't see this because we allow it to happen to us. We don't have an understanding. We must become educated and learn, and then we fear the IRS. Why is it that we fear, so many of us? I mean, this is not restricted to an ethnic group either, because a lot of people fear the IRS. But why is it that people fear the IRS so much?
Hey, Cortez, you want to go first on this before I answer?
Yeah. Let me give the short answer because I know you're gonna get it.
Oh, come on, man! I'll keep it short tonight.
But basically, we've been conditioned to fear the IRS, and that's pretty much all it is. And then the old saying goes, "You fear what you don't understand." So when you haven't taken the time to understand the rules and regulations that are set up by the IRS, then you hear a lot of hogwash out in the world, misinformation, and that kind of feeds into that fear. And our government and our institutions kind of allow that to happen because we are in a capitalistic society. So those who know capitalize on those who don't know.
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
Right.
Go ahead.
I just want to add real quick. You got to remember, though, the part of the reason we fear the IRS too is that they're the agencies that's known for taking down Al Capone. And people are aware that the IRS, they're the only agency that can come in and seize your stuff without a warrant. Oof. Yeah, so that kind of knowledge is out there. However, people aren't willing to understand that there are ways to counter them, which is why I'm in this business, is to help, my clients counter the IRS, and because they do make mistakes, but people are so scared because they think, oh my gosh, well, they got Al Capone, who was most powerful mobster, they could get me too. Right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little scary, and especially when you get a letter. You can get a letter from IRS, and your heart starts beating, because I know I've gotten them. And I remember one time I got one, and they was telling me something about $10,000, and my eyes got a little big, and I'm saying, $10,000? What are they talking about? Of course, I didn't owe them $10,000, and I knew I didn't, so I was able to prove it. And business went on as usual, but it can be fearful. So we know there are some myths that are involved, and we want you guys to talk to us about the primary, most significant myths that we as taxpayers don't understand, and we don't capitalize on those tax breaks that we could have, and there are a lot of tax deductions that we don't get. So what are some of those myths?
You want to go first, financial health mentor?
All right.
Because I could go on and on about this, man.
Yeah, because he's been debunking myths since January 19th or something. Every day he's out there, and I love those videos, by the way.
I do
Thank
too.
you. But sometimes I forget them because there's so many of them.
But primarily, I think one of the biggest myths that I like to bust is that people think they cannot take advantage of tax deductions if they have a home-based business. And that's one thing that I like to educate people on and help them understand, that the United States tax code is the #1 wealth building tool in the world. Problem is, like with most tools, there's only a select few who know how to use those.
That's right.
Yep.
Yep. You have to know how to use them. So
And that's why the rich keep being rich and the poor keep being poor.
That's right.
Right.
Because we don't have, certain people don't have access to that kind of information that will give them access to tax breaks, or to where they don't have to give half of their earnings to the Internal Revenue Service, their hard work and labor, and then they have to give it away, or they take it from you in your paycheck.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you shouldn't have to pay, if they call him Uncle Sam, but I always say he's not my uncle, so why should I give him my tax dollars?
Yeah.
Right.
So some of
Yeah.
those myths that we need to expel, because we should be in segueing into that part that he just said about the home base.
Right.
Is that the best way to start a business? And go ahead and talk about some of those myths.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's definitely one of them, because with the home base, you can lower your capital costs, and the IRS tax code allows you to get up to $1,500 a year on the home base deduction.
Wow.
And a lot of people think that when you do a home-based business or a side business, that you're subject to be audited more, but the IRS recently has said that that's not necessarily true, because they've acknowledged that there's been a rise in home-based businesses. You now have a lot of internet businesses,
That's
right?
right.
And also, I've said this in one of my videos talking about this particular subject, that the likelihood of somebody getting audited, if your taxable income, is $200,000 or less, you have less than 1% chance of getting audited.
Mm-hmm.
So most of us, entrepreneurs, startups, they're not looking for you.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, unless you're conservative, and well, then I pray for you guys in the South that are conservatives. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a liberal, by the way, when I say that. Just make that
Just
clear.
saying, huh?
Just saying, because I got friends in Texas might be listening, saying, "What's happened to you?"
But also, as we throw around that word audit, we have to understand that an audit is nothing to fear if you have your things in order.
Right.
That's right.
right.
Yeah.
Audit is simply a review of your records, where they want you to prove that you had a legitimate reason to claim the deductions that you claimed. So if you
Yes.
have good records, then you're okay.
Right.
That's right.
And we don't take advantage of technology, because, in fact, this past weekend, I was in Houston giving a tax seminar to the Screen Actors Guild in Houston. And I showed them an online tool through my phone called Everlance, which allows you to track your expenses, revenues, and mileage.
What is that called again?
Everlance. EVERLANCE.
Everlance.
Everlance. Completely free. No ads.
Okay.
And the thing is that a lot of people leave a lot of money on the table by not recording mileage. I think most people that I know personally probably are leaving an extra $1,000 because you're not using a precise mileage log. People think the IRS won't accept a mileage log from an app, but as long as it says where you've gone, to and from, and why, that they'll accept that. And so for some people, it's like, oh, it's not a big deal if I forget a $20 receipt here or there, but then that $20 could keep you in the 20% tax bracket versus going over 25% tax bracket, or you'll go 25, 28. And so the 1%, then lastly, I don't want to be talking too long, but
you good.
there's also a perception that someone like me, a CPA, is only available for the rich white guy. I'm serious.
You're right.
Because people call me. It's like, oh, you're gonna be costing a fortune. It's like, no. I was like, H&R Block is overcharging you. You're paying $350 to somebody that doesn't even have a license. That only took 10 hours of
a crash course
through the IRS and get a piece of paper and a pizza, and now you can do your taxes. And I charge the same fee or even lower because I have clients that make less than $10,000.
Right.
That they're eligible to get the earned income credit because she was a single mom with a child. And so they think, oh, you gotta be a rich white guy, or you gotta be the rich black guy. You gotta be like Rob Edwards or Will Smith or
Bob Johnson.
No, they're rich because they got smart. They hired a CPA a long time ago.
And you want an expert. You want an expert to do your taxes, because I'm telling you, that is a myth that a CPA. Because I used to think that a CPA. Oh, I can't get a CPA. I used to go to an enrolled agent and they're good. I'm not saying they're good, but I thought a CPA was out of my budget, and I said, "Oh wow!" And I'm going to tell you, he's gained a client in me.
Thank you.
We'll be using Eric to do my taxes starting this year.
Thank you.
Because last year I went to a financial planner and thought that I was going to a CPA because I was misled by the person that referred me. And when I got there and asked the question, found out it wasn't. And then too, I got a letter from IRS again because my taxes were not done properly. It's nothing I did wrong, and I didn't owe anything, but this financial planner. So watch out who you get to go to do your taxes, regardless of your income. Get an expert.
Yeah.
And the other thing with the CPA too is the tax preparer. They're going to get busy from January 19th to around February 15th. They don't even go all the way to April 15th. They will run out of business right at the end of February. But a good CPA is going to be with you throughout the entire year. If you got a question about a purchase that could be business related, you can get your CPA on the phone and say, hey, will this be a tax deduction? How can you, a good CPA will save you money all throughout the year and not just prepare your taxes once a year.
That's
correct. I agree, because I get those kind of questions from a client that has a June 30 year end, so his tax returns not going to be filed till the summer, and he texts me. And it's free. And I think part of it as a CPA is that I don't think we as a whole and CPAs do a good job of communicating our value, because most of us don't like talking to people. And it's sad. Because when I was in the accounting class, they hated me coming in talking to people, giving presentations. Like, you talk too much. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Build a relationship?
Right. That's how you build your relationships. You got to talk to people. So what are some of the other myths? You've talked about the home business. Some people are afraid to start a business out of their home. They don't know. You better go for it. Mine started out of my home, and then some people think, oh, if I make over 200K, you say they're going to...
if you make under
200K.
That you're going to get audited, right.
Yeah, you're going to get audited. You're less likely to get audited,
and
right?
Also, I think, does not understand the filing status. So... particularly in our community, particularly, we have a lot of single parents, okay? And if you're a single parent, they tend to file as single and claim independent, right? And so the single exemption for this year is $6,300, but the IRS does allow you to claim head of household under the same circumstance. And now you're getting a $9,100 exemption, and you could be married but not be living with your spouse and still be head of household. But again, those little differences, I did this for a client of mine. She's single, but she didn't know she could be head of household. And that extra $2,800 exemption got her from owing the IRS $500 to getting a refund of about $500 from federal and then $300 from the state of California.
See?
Just and that's the difference with, most, CPA and most I do know some tax preparers, and they're probably gonna be mad at me saying this, but most of them don't have the comprehensive knowledge, because as CPA we have to have 40 hours CPE every year.
You have to know your stuff. So I'll be going to Eric, like I said, my new tax preparer. And I know that's a good one, because a lot of people that are separated, and they probably do think that they can't file as head of household.
Right.
But there are ways that you can do that. And the myth about not using a CPA, by all means, use the person that has the expert and keep up with the tax changes and so forth. And another one, if you could go over, is about how you can employ your children, because some people think that if you got children, minors, you can't. I just learned about this, that you can employ your children. I've raised 3 adult children, and I didn't know I could employ my children doing my little businesses.
That's something Mr. Financial Health Mentor was doing. See, I'm single. I don't have kids, so that wasn't a nuance that he, whispered to me on the blab. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I'll go look it up. So I started telling my clients, "Say, you got kids, put them to work. Instead of paying them allowance, pay them a salary."
Right.
My children do not get an allowance. They go to work and they get a paycheck. And the reason this is significant, especially in our community, is because we are, as Eric wrote in the foreword of the book, we are perishing for lack of knowledge. So yes, I pay my children a paycheck because it's tax deductible for me. As long as I pay them less than $6,300 for the year, it's tax free for them, so they don't have to file taxes on that money. But the other thing it does, they all have their own bank accounts, so it gives me the opportunity to start imparting some money management skills into them. Yep. See, every time they get paid, before they can spend any money the way that they want to, they have to first buy, build, or invest in some sort of asset. So I'm teaching them the difference between assets and liabilities while they're helping me in my business, and while I'm getting a huge tax deduction based on the salaries that I pay each one of them. So that's a cool way that you can start putting money into your kids' hands, and then start letting them understand some real money principles and how money really works. Because when you do it via a bank account, then of course they're minors, so I have to be the custodial parent on the account. So they still can't spend that money the way that they want to. We have to sit down and we create budgets, and we manage, and we decide on how we're going to invest a portion of it, how they're going to save a portion of it, how they're going to tithe a portion of it, and then they get to do what they want to do with it.
And that's a good strategy, because I wished I had known about that. And you said it's what? How much a year?
$6,300
or less than.
Right, because the standard deduction is $6,300, so that's right.
Per child.
That's per child.
Per child, yeah.
Ooh, and Cortez, I know that from your bio, some of this I found on your website, and we'll tell you website at the end of the show. You have 5 wonderful sons. You have a beautiful wife. You have a husband and a father. So you got those kids going to work, I know, huh?
Yes, I do. And the funny thing about it is, they're good at a lot of stuff.
Right.
But, one of them, one of my kids I'm a youth basketball coach as well. So one of my websites that I have is basketball related. So I have what's called a social media curator. Just like an art curator takes care of an art gallery. Well, he curates my Facebook fan page and my website by going to find cool articles on Steph Curry and all these guys. And he posts them on the fan page to get us traffic. So that's his job. That's what he does. And he's good at Facebook already, because what teenager isn't?
Right.
So they got skills that we could be employing, but we just have to understand the power in that, and then teaching them ownership and good financial principles along the way. That's just icing on the cake.
Well, that's yours. Now let me
Cortez,
ask. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Cortez, that's a big skill, because I have a partner that does that for a living, and that's a very, very lucrative business to be able to drive traffic through Facebook. There are businesses that spend thousands. I've cut a check for my future campaign for the rest of tax season. So your son's gonna be doing very well.
And they are. Yeah. And what I want to ask is, can I borrow one and get a tax deduction? Can I borrow one too? Seriously. Is there any way you can get Mr. CPA, Eric? Is there any way you can borrow somebody's child and get a tax deduction? How does that work?
Cortez would have to sign up. He had to sign. Hey, I have your signature from the book contract. I can forge it. Oh shit! I should have said that. Never mind.
We're just kidding about forgery now. Don't take that one serious. We don't. We're just kidding, but yeah, we'll borrow one of those kids. But is it? Do you have to have a volunteer then if they're underage? Could you have a? I'm just asking a question because I'm curious about that.
I'm not sure about volunteers because for Cortez he can do that because he's claiming them as dependent.
Right.
Because otherwise now we get into young kids volunteering. You get into the labor laws.
Oh, okay.
But I'm sure there's a lot of that stuff going on underneath the table. If you look at the other communities, just that we need to be smart.
That's right.
And do the same thing because as a CPA, I learned. My client in Houston said his CPA used to tell him that he was an artist, right? So I'm supposed to be an artist to paint the picture that the government wants to see.
Yeah.
So I can at least help you paint the picture of what and then he said, and then the attorney said, yeah, you need to be like the Better Call Saul of CPA.
Well, parents, you hear that now. Use these tax laws and pay. You can pay. I mean, that's a good deduction for you. And guess what? Instead of you going out buying your kids school clothes, football gear, and all that, pay them this $6,300 or less to do some work because they are good at social media and they can buy their own school clothes.
That's right.
And guess what? It's a tax deduction for you. So use the system, and that's why we hate IRS because we don't know how to use the system. See, rich people like Donald Trump, they're using it to their advantage because they know it. The rich folks designed it, of course.
Absolutely.
That's why Mitt Romney wouldn't release his taxes.
That's right.
Yeah, because wasn't his tax rate like 15%?
Yeah, it was 12 to 15%.
Yeah, his admin's effective tax rate's like 33%.
Yeah,
It wasn't that he didn't want us to know how little that he paid, because he can care less, because everybody in that world knows that. He doesn't want the general public to know they have the ability to do the exact same thing.
That's right.
That's what the big thing was. Everybody in Washington knows the tax game and the tax laws and how to make it work, because they're all S corps, they're all business owners. They have naming rights for their own names, what they run under, and all of that stuff. So they understand that. So it wasn't a big deal for them. But what they didn't want is the general public to understand that, wait a minute.
That's right.
I can have my own, I can be a business entity like Jay-Z says, and Eric quotes him all the time. I'm not a business, man. I'm a business, man.
That's right.
And so you can be a walking business and literally write off 60 to 70% of your lifestyle, depending on the business that you operate.
That's right.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, it's funny how Mitt Romney said people are corporations too, but Mitt kind of he apologized. He didn't realize he slipped up because you are a corporation. It's up to you to decide. You can be a corporation for the government. You can be a corporation for you and your family.
That's right. Yeah. So do it. But we have a picture we want to put up. How using the tax code to build wealth, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. You have that picture, Ken, using the tax code to build wealth. That's the picture there, using the tax code to build wealth, and it asks the question why poor people hate Uncle Sam and why wealthy people love Uncle Sam.
And Uncle Sam is the same person.
That's right. And Eric and Cortez have this, the financial health mentor, and our powerful and empowering CPA. They're both powerful and empowering, and we need to utilize their skills and help us to overcome the struggle in the Black community. And with that said, what we're going to do is take a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk some more about how, as Black people, we can dig ourselves out of a hole, and a lot of it has to do with credit cards and so forth. We want to elaborate on that a little bit, and then we want Cortez to tell us a little bit about the book and what it is about a slow leak in some tires and how we are getting robbed on the highway and we don't even have a mask on. So let's take a break and stand by, everybody.
Yes, Eric, Pierre, and H. Cortez Thornton, they're our guests here on Aim to Purpose, the radio show. It is Tax Time 2016, getting the best tax breaks. We'll be right back. This edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, is brought to you by L. Hicks Consulting Services. When you want the best in business coaching, life coaching, or perhaps your organization, business or company is in need of a dynamic speaker for an upcoming workshop or seminar, contact Louise Hicks for L. Hicks Consulting Services at 1-562-310-1495. From anywhere around the world, that's 1-562-310-1495. For more information about Louise Hicks and her consulting services, visit her website at www.louisehicks.biz. Again, that's www.louisehicks.biz. Or call 1-562-310-1495. L. Hicks Consulting Services, where professionalism is top priority.
Hello, world, again. We're back, and we are having a great conversation here today with our special in-studio guest, Pierre, CPA, and our Skyped-in guest all the way from Missouri. Is it St. Louis, Cortez? St. Louis, Missouri. Cortez, an author of this book that we're going to talk a little bit about called Financial Health Traffic Report. And if Ken could zoom in on the little cover here, that's what the book looks like, Financial Health Traffic Report. And it's by H. Cortez Thornton, who is on the phone right now. Now, he's giving a free download of this book. And if you go to his link, we're going to give you the website, and we're going to... you can get this book for free, and it's not a lot of pages. I think it's about 60 some pages or so.
65.
Yeah, something like that. And you can download it for free, and it's so much information in here. And I don't know, that might be a limited time, so you need to do it as soon as possible. Download it. But we want to talk a little bit about now struggling. Within the Black community, we know collectively we are struggling. We are at the bottom of all the ethnicities, really, in terms of economics. And that's our primary problem that we face in the Black neighborhoods, is economically we struggle because we don't understand how this capitalistic system works. So we get into credit card debt and we don't know how to handle it. What is some advice you and Eric can give us on how not to get ourselves in corporate debt with these credit cards?
Well, that's difficult because they make credit so easy and they make it so very socially acceptable.
Right.
If you talk to someone about purchasing a house without a mortgage, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. But there is a way that you can purchase a home without a mortgage if you save and prepare for it.
Yes.
But they make credit so easy to attain. But the problems that we face, if you're working a 9-to-5 job, busting your butt, one of the first things that you can do as an individual, and this is how it will affect us collectively as a community, the first thing we have to do is stop overpaying Uncle Sam.
Right.
Yes.
The reason that we are drowning in debt and struggling financially, there's 4 major challenges that we have to overcome. Number 1, we have to overcome inflation. Number 2, we have to overcome taxes. Number 3, we have to overcome debt. And number 4 is probably the biggest of them all. We have to overcome this low financial IQ so we can make better financial decisions. So I like to teach folks that the first thing you want to do is figure out how you can minimize your taxes. Of all the taxes that we're hit with, the one tax that we do have control over is our income tax. And for 8 out of 10 people in this country, they are overpaying income tax, giving Uncle Sam too much money. That's why they love Eric this time of year, because they're getting a big refund back, which the government is just giving them back the money that they overpaid.
Right.
So think about it like this. Most people are overpaying roughly $5,000 per year. If that $5,000 per year was invested at an 8% rate of return over someone's working career around 30 years, that will yield over $700,000 that you can pass down to the next generation.
Wow.
That's a real shock of wealth.
That is. So, Eric, well, that's great, Cortez, because we do that. We allow the government to hold our money. Aren't they getting interest on our money as we allow them to hold it for us or take out the money? Is it any way you could, like what Cortez is saying, not pay into that money and keep your own money and invest it?
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things, and Cortez does a great job of talking about in the book, because we spoke about his book in my podcast, 6 months ago, is adjusting your W-4 if you're a wage earner. Okay, so a lot of people will do zero withholding so they can get the big refund, but what I find ironic, and Cortez talks about a lot in his videos in the book. What bank in the right mind is going to loan you money at zero interest? None. Okay? Even the corporations, if they have good enough credit, they'll get hit with 0.5 interest or LIBOR +2. Because I know millionaires that get loans at LIBOR +2, which is +2 points, right? But yet we loan the federal government money at zero. And then, I get notices from the IRS from time to time that their system is down. And the danger about waiting on these refunds is that the federal government determines when they want to pay you back.
Exactly.
They can have convenient glitches anytime they want, and you're SOL on that refund. I know, because I've gotten some emails from the federal government about their practitioners, whining the board, please tell your clients that they're not going to be able to get their refunds for blah, 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 blah. And, also because of competitors like H&R Block doing the commercials, it's refund season. I want to slap that guy. The images he uses. And then I have fellow CPAs in the black community that go out there and talk about I can maximize your refunds. No, you should trim their tax debt, because the 1%, they bring in multi-million dollars. If all they have to cut is $10,000 to keep $2 million, that's what we say in Haiti. We trading goats for cows.
That's right. It's all about keeping money in your pocket.
So keep it in your pocket, and like you said.
Let me ask this real quick. Should we have credit cards? Because every time you use it, you're borrowing money.
You're right.
So I mean, is it good for us to have the plastic, or should we pay outright cash for virtually everything? Or do you think it is good to have a credit card?
I guess if you want me to be completely honest, the way the system works, unfortunately, you probably need to have a credit card, I guess, maybe at the beginning of your life and use it a couple of times, and then have the discipline to not use it at all. But honestly, I think Cortez agreed with me that you should pay everything with cash, because if you can't pay that credit card bill, then you got the interest charges.
Yes.
And that doesn't free up cash flow, because once you pay for it with cash, that's it.
Right.
And it's a hard thing to do, because that's something that even me, most of us, we're used to having credit cards. It's easy to go haywire. It's like, go to Pizza Hut, go get some chicken at Roscoe's, and get some gas.
And they're using their credit card.
Using that credit card, swipe. Because in fact, they've done studies. When you pay with cash or a debit card, it brings more emotional pain. They've actually done these scientific studies, but we're so pain adverse, we'd rather use the credit card.
See how they reverse that on us?
When you use that credit card, those studies that Eric mentioned, they actually reveal that people will spend 15 to 25% more when they're swiping, because it's virtual, so it doesn't feel real.
Right. That's true.
Yes.
And you really should be using a credit card when you have to go and rent a car or something like that for things like that. But if you do use it just pay it off every month. And that way you don't have any debt, because that debt can start adding up before you knew it. But before you know it, believe me, I've been there, and I try not to use. I have credit cards, but I try not to use them unless I have to. But it's good I have it, because if I'm out of town or something, I need to rent a car, or you need to show it for something. And we have maybe 5-6 minutes left, so we want to get your take on what do you mean by slow leak in the tire, and what is it about this highway robbery? We may have touched on it already, so briefly kind of elaborate on that.
We touched on it a little bit, because basically that slow leak that I refer to in the book is basically inflation. And we typically call that the silent income killer. I'll give you a story real quick. I was sitting down with a client and they told me about their cost of living increase on their job. And they got a whopping 1.75% increase on the job. Now, some people will say, man, you should be happy that A, you even got a job. You should be happy that A, you even got a increase at all. But I want to tell you something about that increase. At 1.75%, the average rate of inflation for the last 100 years or so has been no less than 2%. So even though that person got a raise on their job, they're actually down at minimum 0.25%, so they're going backwards. And that's how the poor stays poor, because they don't have anything to buffer them for inflation if they don't have any investments. So that's what I mean by the 4 flat tires. And then on the flip side, getting robbed on the highway with no mask, that's the flip side. That's Uncle Sam, because he's going to pull up to you and he's just going to strong arm you and take your money before you even get it.
Right.
So if you don't have a system in place that's going to help you overcome inflation and minimize your taxes, you're going to find yourself working until you literally die.
And you don't want to have to do that if you don't have to. So remember those: inflation, your taxes, your debt, and the most significant one is that low financial IQ.
Yeah.
We got to raise that. And we want to go ahead and we got a couple of minutes, so we got to wrap it up.
I was going to say, like, that's sad that, we subject ourselves to go to places that we should be fortunate to make millions of dollars for somebody else so that we can get a 2% raise. That's sad.
It is sad. So
because that company paid double the amount of dividends to their shareholders because they made record revenue.
That's correct.
Right.
That is so true.
Right.
So why don't we have a final thought from Cortez and tell our listeners and viewers how to get in touch with you, and then we'll have a final thought from Eric. So you have to make it pretty quick.
All right. Final thought. Guys, do everything that you can to start putting some information on wealth building into your brain. There's all kinds of information on YouTube, free talks by Kiyosaki and Dr.
I like his
Watkins
show.
and all of these guys. All of these places will give you free information on wealth building strategies. So if you do nothing, take nothing else away from this, make sure that you're trying to increase your financial IQ. I can be reached via email at hcortez@financialhealthmentor.com. You can go to my website, hcortezthornton.com. And if you want a free download of the book that Eric was so gracious enough to do the foreword for, you want to go to hcortezthornton.com/free download.
hcortezthornton.com/free download.
And be sure and get it. I printed mine off. Be sure and print this off because it's great information in here, and it shares so much on how to raise your financial IQ, and that's what we need to do, particularly in the black neighborhood.
Eric, any final thoughts? And where the people can reach you.
All right. Use the tax code to build wealth and put your money up, and stop making money for everybody else but yourself and your family. How I can be reached: you can reach me by phone. You can call or text me. My number is 619-800-6852. That's 619-800-6852. You can also email me. My email address is eric@bedrockassurance.com. eric@bedrockassurance.com.
And they are on social media. They are on
That's right.
Facebook.
Look them up.
YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. So go to all of them. And for this interview and all of our interviews that we do on the show, go to our YouTube channel, Aim to Purpose Radio.
Yes, and we want to thank Eric, Pierre, and H. Cortez Thornton for being on our show today. Vital information that we all need. I know I learned something. These are things that we don't learn in high school or in the college level.
Most of the time, you're not going to learn it. So by all means, take heed, and we will have them back, provided they're willing to come back throughout the year to give us more financial information on how to manage our money and how to get the most from what we work for, because we know, as you mentioned, Robert Kiyosaki, the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I would say everybody go out and read that, and he talks about a job which is just over broke. I've read that book. Great read.
He has a great show too.
Great show too. So with that being said, Always remember, check us out. I'm louisehicks.biz, my website, and also we are on all the social medias. Twitter, you go to my website, you can see them all. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we look forward to you joining us next week. We thank you all for joining us this week for Black History Month, that we wrapped up today with some vital financial information. And with that being said, until next week, remember, your power lies within you. Let it loose.